Hi, we're on to the next part of the history of the Jews of Rome. We got to 1870. 1870 was great because the Jews of Rome acquired, with the new state of Italy in Rome, full rights. They could do anything. They could live anywhere. They could marry anyone, which was pretty great considering that over the past 3 centuries they were not allowed to. But what happened? Well, first of all, I want to talk to you about cemeteries. The Jewish cemeteries, during the period of the ghetto, well, we've seen that in ancient Roman times, they were buried in catacombs around different parts of town. Then they had a cemetery at Porta Portese, where now there is a flea market. And then, in the 1600s, the cemetery was moved to the Aventino, to the Aventine Hill, one of the most beautiful hills of Rome, not far from the Mouth of Truth, on the other side of the Circus Maximus. On one side, the Circus Maximus has got the Palatine Hill, on the other side, it's got the Aventine Hill. So if you want to go there now, you will go to the Roseto Comunale, to the City of Rome Rose Garden. That used to be the Jewish cemetery. Why am I telling you this? Well, because the Jewish, all throughout the history of the ghetto, that's where the Jewish people were buried. And then what happened? They stopped being buried there towards the end of the 1800s. And then under Mussolini, that was called the Ortaccio degli Ebrei in dispregiative terms. It meant like the yucky garden of the Jews. And what happened after that is that during Mussolinian times, in the 30s, that all the bones were taken away to the cemetery of the Verano, where everybody else was being buried. And this particular garden became the City of Rome Rose Garden. After the war, Mussolini no longer there. There was a new reconciliation with the Jewish community of Rome. And if you go there now, you will find that the lanes between the roses are shaped as a menorah. So if you look from a satellite image, you will see a menorah in the City of Rome Rose Garden. And we'll also see the tables of the law at the entrances. But one of the things that really, really irks me is that one pope that we all love for other reasons, for the art that has left us, Urban VIII, in the 1600s, in 1625, I think, he had a new rule for the Jewish community. They could not put their names on gravestones. Only if you were a rabbi or if you were a really, really important person, you could have your name and you should be buried in a slightly different area. But if you were a normal person, like you and me, you had to be buried without a funeral procession and your gravestone would not have any name. Now, that was just the cruelest thing one can think of to me. If you go and see the museum under the temple, you will see that the Jewish community went in a roundabout way about this, and they got beautiful materials and they wrote the history and the details of the person who had passed, and those were kept in the synagogues. So, going back to 1870, great time, everybody was free to go and to do whatever they wanted. Equal, full rights. And what happened? Well, we have seen that the ghetto was razed to the ground, and that different buildings were built, that even the building of the 5 schools was razed to the ground in 1910 after the new temple, the Tempio Maggiore, had opened. And it was just a very different atmosphere. So rather than praying with your own community in a really small place, you would pray in a huge, massive, open space. So the feeling was different. But it was great times. So not only full rights, but even the mayor of Rome became a Jewish person. And so Ernesto Nathan, he had followed the resurgence of Italy, and he was secular, he had an inclusive policy, he looked after everybody as long as they were Romans, didn't matter if they were Jewish or not, but he himself was Jewish. So we went from a situation where Jewish people had to be confined in the ghetto to where the first citizen of Rome was Jewish. And he was mayor between 1907 to 1913. And then clearly there is the Great War. In the Great War, unlike in the Second World War, the Jewish community enrolled and they were part of the army. They were soldiers, they fought alongside Catholics as a member of the Italian army. And then the fascist era started. What happened? Well, actually at the beginning, things didn't look to dire straight away. In 1829, Mussolini had the Lateran Pacts with the church to regulate the relationship between the state and the Catholic Church. And in 1930, Mussolini had another agreement with the Jewish community to regulate the relationships between the state and the Jewish community. And then it all fell apart. But I'm going to tell you about that in the next video.